Are you going to help me film, Frodo? Are you helping? Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Frodo. Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Annalisa, and today I will be telling you about my top 10 best books from 2021, which are just gonna be my favorites. A couple of them have better reasons than that, but that's most of what it is. Before we get into that, I just need to do a little bit of cat shaming. I don't know how well you're always able to see them in the background, but normally there's a row of 3 bottles back there that are holding up this row of books, along with a fairly sturdy bookend. And one of them was very big and heavy and also had some rocks in it to make it heavier and steadier. 2 of my cats, when they use the cat run that runs over the top of my bookshelves, like to get down on the top of the bookshelves where I store some stuff and, you know, push stuff off. And while I was out of the room, so I don't know which one of them it was, some cat jumped down from on top onto these books, tipped over the books, and did a little domino effect that crashed all of the bottles to the ground. 2 of the bottles are fine. This is the 3rd and biggest bottle after I glued it back together. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it or not. I really like the shape of it because it's got like this zoop zoop thing going on, and I found it at an antique store as opposed to Hobby Lobby has ones that are more shaped like that one. So it's not easily replaceable, but it was either Frodo or Pippin because they're the only ones that go up there. Even places where cats don't usually go, at some point they'll go there and they'll tip over your glass objects. Frodo's still in the room giving himself a bath and he doesn't care about my shaming at all, so either he's not guilty or he's just shameless. So this is mostly going to be order of when I read them, because I was going down the list of like little pictures of books that they have on Goodreads. One of the books that I read quite early on in the year was Love from A to Z, which I raved about at the time, and I think I've talked about a fair amount since then for various reasons, but the biggest reasons that I loved it were the Muslim representation that was, of course, different from my own upbringing, but also made me realize how much I have in common with a lot of Muslims because of a lot of similar ideologies and customs, ways of living, things that religious people do, that are actually quite similar between Christianity, at least the type that I grew up in, and Islam. And also I really like the characters. The romance was really cute. But yeah, it was just a really good book. It also addresses grief. It addresses social activism and how hard it is to be on all the time, and how if you are a social activist, constantly trying to work for your own people, whatever type of marginalization you may have, and is constantly having people come after you on the basis of that marginalization, as well as possibly other things, you need to take a break. And I really liked a lot of those things that it looked at. Alright, and soon after that I read The Downstairs Girl, which was recommended to me by Renee, of the Librarian of Alexandria, who I will link below, when I asked for books that have sweet male leads or romantic interests. And this one definitely delivered. I really liked the romantic interest of our main leading lady character. He's so cute. It was very much right up my alley. It is about a, I think she's living with her grandfather, so at least 3rd generation Chinese immigrant to America. It was a long time ago. I don't think it was the 1900s yet. I feel like it was the late 1800s, but I might be wrong about that. Just from the way they were dressed and like the things they talked about. I think they had rail cars, but not cars yet. And it's about classism and racism, and it's about The Power of the Press, and it is about this young Chinese American woman coming into her own through being an agony aunt for a newspaper, and how when people don't know who she is and they think she's white, they're quite happy to take advice from her. And she gives a lot of feminist advice, and that gets people riled up, but also like makes people buy the newspaper more, and she's trying to help out this newspaper because her family has been helped by them. And yeah, it was really interesting and really sweet. The relationship between her and her grandfather is really sweet. And it's also about her day job being a house servant for some wealthy white people who live nearby. How she interacts with them and how they treat her. But yeah, it was really pleasant and comforting. Oh, and in addition to her various other skills, the main character is also a hat maker, and she's like really artistic. So there are like a lot of different aspects that were really interesting, and I felt like none of them were like dropped or not explored enough. I feel like everything was handled really well, so I really liked it. The next one that I was reading basically all through January and February and maybe even March was the Yona of the Dawn series. I really, really loved the anime version of this, so when my library finally bought a bunch of them, I was very excited, and so started requesting them bam, 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 because, you know, I can read them quite quickly. And I think I read about 20 volumes over those months, and I just wanted to select that in general as one of my favorite books. I do have favorite arcs and particular volumes, but I can't remember like what number they were since it was way back at the beginning of the year. But any of the ones where they're exploring the dragon's backstory, because this is a book series that involves dragons who are like also in the shape of people, and them uniting around a dethroned princess and her bodyguard slash childhood friend slash love interest. And I really love anything that dives more into their characters because they're very interesting. And so that book series has a lot of my favorite tropes. It's got found family, it's got all that stuff with a love interest. It's got a very interesting dynamic between the main character and the antagonist, who used to be a part of a trio with the main character and her love interest. So yeah, very dramatic and very interesting, and I'm really excited to see where it goes, because I think I read up through as many as were currently translated, so I need to check like if they've translated any more. I'm not sure if the actual Japanese version is finished yet, or if the author is also writing more while translation is being done on the earlier ones. But it's just so enjoyable, if occasionally emotionally heartrending. Then we have Catfishing on Catnet, which I heard about from Angela of Literature Science Alliance. It sounded like something I would really enjoy, and I did. It is about a AI that runs a website called Catnet, where people upload pictures of cats and also other animals, and that gives them like access to this website, and then they get to like make friends groups, and the AI like puts people in friend groups that like seem like they will work well together based on an algorithm and like figuring out what type of person you are by what you've chatted in the past, called Clouders, which is the name for a group of cats. And there you get to see a lot of the conversation between the members of the Clouders, and that's a lot of the relationships that are developing throughout the story. And the dialogue, that's like a multi-alogue, because they're going back and forth with this group chat, seems really natural and also really interesting. There's a lot of queer members of the Clouder that our main character is in, and there are mostly high schoolers, I think. A few might be older than that. And so they just talk like teenagers who are genuinely kind people. A lot of them have interest in animals, and that's why they're on this website. So they talk about animals, and they just support each other through a lot of stuff. They talk about what's going on in their daily lives, and they like show up for each other virtually, and I really enjoy that. And also the AI is a character that you're introduced to right at the beginning, and so that part is also very interesting because I really like AI characters. Data from Star Trek is an AI. There's an AI character in A Long Journey to a Silent Planet, Small Angry Planet, whatever that book is by that famous sci-fi author, and I really enjoyed that. So I usually tend to like books that have AIs in them, and the ending of that book is one of my favorite endings of ways that books can end. I really liked it. Then, still sometime in the spring? No, this is getting on towards like April or June. I read Dark and Deepest Red, which I have been very slowly working my way through Anna Marie McLemore's backlog, and I guess new books, because I think this one was relatively new, because I adored Wild Beauty. It's so freaking good, and I love the lyrical prose, and that was very much present in this one as well. And also the queerness is in pretty much all of Anna Marie McLemore's work, because they are a queer author themselves. And this one was about Romani people in Europe and had a dual timeline going on that was somewhat related to it, and it that was going on in America with descendants of Romani people and I think some Latinx people who lived in the same town. And there were magical dancers and a dancing plague in the past timeline, and magical shoes that involved dancing magic in the current timeline. And it was very interesting. It was really emotional and very beautifully described. And I also really loved the ending of that book, especially in the past timeline. That was very, very cool. Also, that cover is amazing. Also, fairly on, I read the Gilded ones, which was just so freaking good. Specific aspects. I love the angry feminism, as you know. That's something I tend to like. That's going to come up in more books that I'm going to talk about. But it was also about exploitation and how men are afraid of women who are powerful, and girls protecting girls, and generally women with cool weapons and cool armor. There was a lot of dark stuff about, like, there's some torture that's mostly off page, and there's also this interesting dualism that actually kind of relates to Iron Widow, which is the next one I'm going to talk about, where men are sent to fight alongside some of the women, even though the women have superpowers and the men don't. And the way that those two groups interacted and their different statuses was also very interesting. And once again, a very good ending. Then Iron Widow. I think I first heard of this from Rachel, and so I requested it from the library before it actually published, and I think I was like, there was a bit of a waiting list. Not a super long one. I was probably like sixth or something, and I read it in like 2 days and was able to send it back so somebody could read it after me, because there were more people in line, because it really sucked me in, and I really wanted to see what happened next, and I really wanted to see the evolution of the relationships that were so interesting. Yeah, the relationships were really cool. The feminism was really cool, very angry feminism. I like that sometimes, you know, tear down the patriarchy, literally. There were other cool lady fighters, and they had the men and the women going into battle together, but had it skewed so that women would die and men would not. That was really interesting. And like the magic system, that's kind of also a sci-fi system, of how these mecha things work, was really interesting. They were based on Chinese mythological creatures, and like the epic battle scenes were really cool, and the really weird setting, along with like the history and figuring out what was really going on, because the government was super secretive about a lot of things, and seeing the main character and her cohorts investigate that was really fun. And it is the beginning of a series. I'm not sure how many books there will be in it, but there's going to be another one, and I'm very excited for it because we were left with a bit of some questions, some kind of urgent questions. So I want to see what's in the next book. I think the author has also come up with another book that's like in a different series. It might even be middle grade. So I need to look into that, and we'll probably read that this year, and also the next Iron Widow if it comes out, which I think it's planned to come out this year. I'm not totally sure. Then we have actor A.G. Brown, which I have talked about a fair amount. It has autistic rep, and it's part of a series that I really like that has a lot of chronic illness rep and neurodivergence too. Get a Life, Chloe Brown was my favorite in the series, but I really love this one, and part of the reason I really love this one is because it retroactively let us know that the previous two characters, who we knew just had chronic illness or neurodivergence, were also autistic. So I love that. I loved watching Eve Brown figure out who she is and what's going on with her, and I loved seeing her interact with her love interest. Once again, I love the dialogue that this author writes. It's just so funny. There's a lot of sarcasm, but also just a lot of general sass. And I love watching people bond over sass, both as a way to tease someone because their assumptions about you were wrong, or they've been a bit of a butthead, so you're getting back at them, while simultaneously also not actually being mean about it or trying to hurt their feelings. I really like that. And having both characters be autistic adds an interesting dynamic of understanding each other really well in some ways, but also having previous bad experiences with neurotypical people kind of get in your way and make you afraid to open up to people, and seeing them figure stuff out together was a lot of fun. Then we have Take the Mic, and I picked this one because it is a short story collection that I actually enjoyed all the way through. And that's kind of a low standard because my standard for short story collections is not that high, but also they were each genuinely really good and like kind of got me revved up to go make things better and like stand up for myself. Were also really interesting and had character dynamics that I really liked, and like the circumstances were so interesting and how each different main character navigated them. I really like seeing that. Kind of at the same time, I'm going to mention another one that was really good. That was a short story collection that I liked every story, was No Man of Woman Born, that I read way back in the beginning of the year, and that was also gorgeous. That one was fantasy, so it was a little bit more up my alley, and it was all about trans people of various kinds, non-binary people, trans men, trans women, ways that transness could interact with common fantasy tropes, like the classic no man or woman born can kill a certain person or take down a certain person, and various other prophecies like that, and I really, really love that. So there are two short story collections that I'm kind of putting together as one to take up one of my top 10 books slots. And the last one is Ofis Ghosts, which I read in December, and it was just so good. Kind of like The Downstairs Girl, it also involves taking a rail car from your tiny house where you live with family off to work for rich white people and them treating you badly. In this case, it was middle grade, and was a supernatural type fantasy that involved ghosts. It had some really cool classic ghost haunting a mansion type moments while also having a lot of new and interesting dynamics that were very different. One of them being that there were a lot of friendly-ish ghosts who were just hanging out because they didn't know quite how to handle their non-malevolent real world business before they went on. And I really loved all of the interactions that Ofis had with ghosts. They were so interesting. And it was a really sweet and comforting story. Despite the mean old lady that Ofis was working for and the spookiness, it was still a really cozy story and just made me really happy when I wasn't feeling so good. So yeah, those were my best books of 2021. I hope that I will have lots of really good books this year. I'm sure I will because I have lots of great sources of recommendations. I've already got quite a few books that I plan to read that will hopefully be making it onto next year's list. And there were a lot of really good books I read last year that weren't on this list just because there are too many to tell you all about. So I would love to know your favorite book from last year, or maybe a book that you have planned for this year that you hope will be one of your best books of this year. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!